What's going on, Bear fans? This episode of the podcast is brought to you by our friends at SeatGeek. Let SeatGeek take the confusion out of your ticket buying experience. Instead of shopping dozens of sites to find the best deal, let SeatGeek do the work for you. Their app scans the web for the best deals to your favorite game, concert, or show, and rates them on a scale of 0 to 10 to let you know if you're getting the best bang for your buck. Use promo code ACAA at checkout to receive $20 off your first purchase. So what are you waiting for? Promo code ACAA for $20 off your first purchase. At SeatGeek, life's an event. We have the tickets. The podcast is also brought to you by our friends at MyBookie. It's hard to believe, but football is almost back. The preseason kicks off next week, August 1st, with the Hall of Fame game. And before you know it, the regular season will be here for college and the pros. That means it's time to get an account at the best online sports book known to man. That's right. I'm talking about MyBookie. With an easy, no-hassle mobile site, 24/7 customer service, and bets on every sport and prop imaginable, MyBookie provides a fun, safe betting experience. And if you deposit today, MyBookie will give you a 50% deposit bonus. That's right. You put in 100, they give you 50. You put in 1,000, they give you 500, and it's just that easy. So go to mybookie.ag and sign up today with promo code BEARS100. That's promo code BEARS100. At MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid. Got to tell you guys, I'm really enjoying this period and this little interview series that I'm doing right now. My guest today is a returning guest to the show, former Chicago Bear, Super Bowl champion, a member of the famous, legendary, mythical 1985 Chicago Bears, the Super Bowl 20 champions. Emery Moorehead is back to talk to us, and he'll share his thoughts on the state of training camp and what it's like today compared to what he went through during his days under Mike Ditka and the two-a-days that they did and everything else in between. We talk a bit about the Bears 100 celebration. We talk a bit about my ideas about the top 100 list for all the Bears that unfortunately Emery was not on and things like that. It was really, really a lot of fun talking to Emery about this. To get a shared experience or for him to share the experience on what it was like in training camp with our beloved back in the 80s and what you have to do mentally to get prepared for training camp and is it a good thing to be cut off from the world and away from your family for those times to get ready for the season, or can it be a detriment? Is it both, depending on who you are? Some guys it's great. Some guys it's nothing but a drain on their lives until they can get back to their families and things like that. So we had a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking to Emery. Got a lot of great insight on the experience and what the players go through in this all-important time of the year. So really enjoyed the conversation. Look forward to having him back. I got to invent reasons to bring Emery back. It's going to be fantastic. So before we get to that, we got news and notes. It's the second Emery Moorehead episode. I was happy to just have the one, and there I got to have him back on the Bears Talk Underground. So let's get to it. This would be number 3 in our little interview series that we're having here between our opponent previews and the start of the preseason. Happy to have Emery Moorehead back on the show. What's going on, everybody? Larry D back for this Emery Moorehead conversation, mostly focusing on the topic of training camp, what it was like for him back in his day in the 80s, and there was some I didn't quite realize, what the preseason all entailed back then. It was much longer back then. I was quite surprised to hear Emery say how long it was, even when they started in Lake Forest and moved to Platteville during his time with the Bears under Coach Ditka and everything. So, whether or not it was an enjoyable thing to be cut off from the world and everything, and what the purpose of training camp was back then was also a little bit different than it is now. So, and the funny thing is that the biggest factor in the difference between then and now is the money. And it was a lot about the players can afford to be full-time football players now. Even guys in 7th-round picks are making $400-something grand a year. If you budget that right, that's more than enough to get you through from the end of one season to the start of another and things like that. So it's a much different time, and training camp had a different purpose back then. Emery and I talk about that amongst other things like the Bears 100 celebration, the top 100 Bears list, and I even brought to him the idea of doing the all-decade team and see what he thought about that as well. So stick around for that. We'll be bringing Emery back on here in just a few minutes. A couple of things I wanted to talk about before we get to Emery. I talked to Emery on Monday. Here it is, Wednesday by the time y'all are hearing this. And, right in between, sitting right in between. Monday, the rookies reported to camp. Tomorrow on Thursday, the veterans will report. They have their first practice on Friday. The pads come on for the first time on Sunday, and then we're off and rolling. And, basically 2 weeks from now, we'll be watching the Bears and the Panthers at Soldier Field, getting it on, kicking off the preseason. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was everybody kind of hit the panic button right off from jump when the Bears made the announcement of a few guys that have been added to that will start training camp on the PUP list, and PUP being PUP, physically unable to perform list. And the marquee name of the three players added to it, one was TJ Clemens, who's still recovering from the ACL injury that he suffered as a member of I believe he was with the Raiders last year. Jonathan Harris? I think it's Jonathan Harris. He's an undrafted rookie free agent. I believe he's got a hamstring issue that he's working through right now. But like I said, the marquee player of the three was Clinton Dix, who apparently injured his knee at the end of off-season workouts. And first of all, obviously, no one likes to hear that, especially a guy like Clinton Dix, who's going to be depended on this year. But the PUP list at the start of the preseason is not as big a deal as it would be if he was starting the actual regular season on the PUP list. Because if you're on the PUP list to start the year, that's 6 games, you're done no matter what. Even if you're healthy after 3, you can't come back until after 6 games have been played. In the preseason, during training camp, you can be activated off the PUP list at any time. And if we've learned anything from Coach Nagy and the way that he handled the players last year, remember last year how he called, how I called Aaron Lynch Mr. Sandy Vagina and everything like that? Turns out they were just keeping him fresh for the regular season, letting him be fully healthy and everything before they brought him back. I ended up eating those words. So I'm going to stay off of Clinton Dix because, Matt Nagy proved me wrong before. Aaron Lynch was actually a solid player for us last year. I just thought he was bringing his injury nonsense with him from San Francisco here to Chicago, and we're paying him a decent amount of money to do nothing. And I ended up being completely wrong about Aaron Lynch, and I'm happy to be wrong about that. So I'm not going to say anything negative about Clinton Dix or him being on the PUP list or anything like that. The Bears are just bringing him along slowly. The priority is week 1, Thursday night against Green Bay. It is not having, making sure Clinton Dix gets the reps in the, the dress rehearsal game against Indy or whatever it is like that. They're not worried about that at all. So they are just wanting to get ready for week 1 so that everybody is healthy, as close to 100% as you can possibly be to start the season against Green Bay. So, like I said, no one likes to hear that kind of thing. No one likes to know that somebody that is going to be heavily dependent upon replacing somebody that the fans were a fan of in Adrian Amos is starting the preseason or starting training camp on the physically unable to perform list. Everything will be fine. I'm sure that he'll be activated at some point during training camp. We might not see him play a snap in the preseason, but that's because the Bears are more inclined to get him ready for week 1 against Green Bay than they are to see him get some reps against the Titans in the series, in the preseason finale or anything like that. So, like I said, no one likes to hear it, but it's nothing to worry about, or at least let's not worry about it until there's something to worry about. I doubt very much this is going to be a Kevin White situation. It seems clear to me that since Matt Nagy came on board, the person that was pulling the strings as far as keeping information from the public or from the press or whatever was John Fox, not Ryan Pace. I remember I had a very, very upset rant on Ryan Pace when out of left field, all of a sudden, Kevin White's got a fractured leg in his rookie season. And, we thought it was just something, he just tweaked something. He'll be fine. We'll see how it goes. And he ended up missing the entire rookie year off of something he did in an OTA practice at the end of the season. So it was more John Fox. Matt Nagy is a lot more transparent with the press, therefore with the public as well. And I'm sure they'll keep us up to speed if anything changes with Clinton Dix. So not the best news to hear from the Bears as they enter camp, this all-important camp. But, again, nothing really to worry about. At least I'm not sweating it at this point. One last thing before we get to Emery Moorehead, kind of an off-the-subject type thing. It's football-related, but it's not Bears-related. The Netflix documentary, Last Chance U, debuted its new season this past Friday on the 19th. I just started watching it this week. I'm about 6 episodes into the 8 that they produced for this season. It's season number 4, and I've watched every second of every episode, and yet every year when I do sit down and watch these episodes, I often wonder why I put myself through it, because it has to be one of the most frustrating documentary series to watch in the history of television, because these kids, a lot of them are super talented football players that just couldn't get it together in the classroom. Some of them are Division I prospects that had to go back to JUCO to get straightened out from one reason or another, didn't adjust well to the first school, thought they'd be the big fish in the big pond, and it turned out to be just the opposite, and they couldn't handle it, and they're trying to get their football lives back on. Or maybe it's just the kids that the documentary producers are choosing to profile. But none of them want to go to class. Every one of them just wants to play football. And, and then when things go wrong on the field, they turn into the worst teammates in the history of sports. It is so frustrating to sit there and watch them. You see them play on the field, and these kids are crazy talented. They're really, really good. These are nationally ranked junior colleges that Netflix has been choosing to do this and everything. They've also happened to choose 2 of the most crazy head coaches that you could possibly find. I mean, there's just characters across the board. The head coaches for these 2 schools that they've done, one I think was in Mississippi. This one is in Kansas for the last 2 seasons. Those guys are both insane, and yet they produce, well, this last season, they're not so good. But these guys win football games they produce, and that's why they're in the position that they're in, and they can act the way they want to act and everything. It's just it's a chore watching these shows sometimes because, like I said, the kids are frustrating to watch. They want everybody to do everything for them, or they expect things to get handed to them and everything. And I just I'm sitting here on my couch, a 40-year-old man, wishing I had the talent that some of these kids have, because I wouldn't have wasted it. You know what I mean? But also, I'm saying this with a 40-year-old man's perspective, as opposed to who knows how I would have been acting if I was that talented at 18. Like these kids are. So I can look at it from both sides, but the old athlete in me wishes that I could have been as good as some of these kids were, because I would love to believe that I wouldn't have pissed it away the way that these kids do. It's like they're doing everything they can not to succeed in some of these situations, even though the people are just opening doors for them left and right to give them the best opportunity. And so it is extremely frustrating to watch. And but somehow I can't stop watching. It's like train wreck TV. I don't want to watch, but I can't look away, kind of thing. So if you're ready for an experience like that, feel free to check it out, and you can thank me later. So anyway, that's all I got for now. We're going to go ahead and bring in our good friend Emery Moorehead from the 85 Bears to talk to us about the training camp experience, what it was like then versus what it's like now, what the differences are, and what the purpose of training camp is, and the difference between those two things. The long and arduous offseason finally coming to a close as we are talking. The rookies of our beloved Chicago Bears are reporting to camp today. The veterans follow suit in Thursday. First joint practice on Friday. And here to talk about the training camp experience and all that it encompasses as teams prepare to make that trip down to South Miami for the Super Bowl this year. Our friend of the show and former 85 Bear and Super Bowl champion himself, Emery Moorehead. Emery, thanks so much for coming back, sir.
It's always a pleasure.
So, Emery, before we get to training camp and the perils and the struggle that it all encapsulates, you did actually go to the Bears 100 celebration. I just want to know what that was like for you, especially since you were one of those people that was on the stage as opposed to a fan who just attended and watched it all unfold.
Well, it was exciting from a player's perspective because there was players from all the way back every decade and guys, that you heard of and you hadn't seen in years were there. And then there was a lot of young guys for me, comparably to me, because now I'm one of the older guys.
Right.
One of the younger guys attending events like this. Now I'm one of the younger guys, and now you see guys like, Nathan Basher and just all these young guys that are now like, been away from the game for 10 or 15 years. And it was great to see them, but it was great to see people like Johnny Morris, who I haven't seen in a long, long time.
Right.
OB was there, who I haven't seen in a long, long time. But then it's always great to see the people you played with as well.
Sure. A lot of gold jackets around that weekend.
Yeah, well, there were a few. I think five or six were in attendance. Sayers was there. Hampton was there. Urlacher did not make it for some reason.
Yeah.
He got sick that night or that day or something. But it was, all the greats, a lot of great players were there. And it was exciting just to see everybody all in one place because, you never know when you're going to see those people again.
Right. Were you part of one of the panels?
I was in an autograph session, and then I was on the 85 Bears panel.
Nice.
Which was about 6 or 8, I think about 8 of us on there. And it got kind of feisty as the defense, as usual, thinks, they're the reason they won the Super Bowl, nobody else,
Right.
But it was fun. We had a great time, great chatter going back and forth, and it was exciting for the fans. And Virginia McCaskey was in the audience, and it was an exciting time for a lot of people.
Let me ask you, what did you think of the throwback uniform they introduced at the celebration?
Well, we never played with throwbacks. Throwbacks are just, they've been the new marketing thing for about 20 years now. And, I understand they're going to be wearing several different throwback uniforms this year in about 4 or 5 games. So we're going to see a lot of different uniforms. The Bears have always been pretty traditional in their uniforms and their helmets. They don't change much, but
Thank God.
They have been changing a lot in the recent years, wearing orange jerseys and stuff like that. So they're trying to catch up with everybody else who, because it's fun to have different colors, but still representing your team, different combinations of colors, and some of the throwbacks are really interesting. I think the players like it. I think they do.
Yeah, well, I'm my love of Akeem Hicks kind of dropped off last year because he was the one that was the big advocate of bringing the orange jerseys back, and I am not a fan of the orange jerseys. I'm not a fan of the Chicago Pumpkins when they wear those jerseys.
Yeah, I don't like it. They look totally different. I wish they stick to the navy blue and the white jerseys.
Yes.
Pretty traditional, but things are different now, Larry. I mean, with these college teams changing every week.
Oh, ridiculous!
A lot of them are just used to it. They want new stuff. They want different looks.
Yeah,
That's the way the players are.
Yeah, I've complained about it, on social media and things like that about how these days you have to check the box score to find out who's playing because you can never tell simply from looking at the uniforms in most cases.
Yeah, and there's a lot of change in between teams too.
Yeah.
With players, so you really got to look at the scorecard, figure out who's on this team, who's on that team. Very, reminiscent of like the NBA free agency a few weeks ago.
Oh yeah.
I mean, everybody's going everywhere, and it's hard to figure out who's going to have a good team, who's going to have a great team. And hopefully the Bears, I know they're pretty excited around here about the Bears, and a lot of people think they can go pretty far this year. So it's going to be an exciting season, and it's just getting started, like you said. Training camps here. Thursday the vets will be playing. Friday they'll be practicing. And it's going to be And this, of course, is a lot different from when I played because they have mandatory OTAs, they have mini camps before, and they get a lot of work in before they go to training camp. And when they get to training camp, they don't hit with full pads anymore.
Right.
I think once a week or something like that. And the training camp, of course, is cut to about 3 weeks. So it's not that intense as it used to be back in the days when I first came in the league, second rookie year. We had 9 weeks of two-a-days.
Oh.
And it was brutal. I mean, there was no relief. And that was when there was 14 regular season games and 16 and 6 exhibition games.
Right.
And when you're a rookie, you come in a week early. So it was 2 months, more than 2 months of brutal football in July and August.
So did it start sooner? Because here we are starting, the last week in July. Did it start like around the 4th of July weekend, something like that?
I remember. I'll tell you what I remember. On my house in Deerfield, we had raspberries all over the place, raspberry bushes. And they would start bearing fruit around the 4th of July. And I knew when that happened, it was time to go to training camp every year. Usually within about a week or a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, the 7th, the 8th, you were reporting for training camp. And it was pretty intense training camps back then under Coach Ditka. He loved to get people in shape. And, there was a lot more hitting in training camp every day, twice a day. And it was more survival of the fittest. Whoever could avoid injury and compete and show, that's how you made the team. And now it's totally different because you don't hit in practice, and by the time the preseason comes, they're not going to play you that long. So it's kind of, I think it's geared to give the veterans a lot of rest, and then you give the young kids a chance to play. But you can't tell if they can play by running out there in shorts and shoulder pads. Because when you get hit in a game, that's when you find out if a guy can get up and next play for you.
Right. And when you were playing in that era, I mean, we talked about this when we had you back on in February with the work stoppages that you were a part of. This was still an era where guys had to have jobs in the off season because they couldn't afford to be full-time football players, right?
Yeah, I mean, everybody had a job because there wasn't a lot of money. I mean, when I first started out, I was playing for the Giants had a 3-year contract for $28,000, $33,000, and $38,000. And about the time that July ran around, you didn't have much money left, so you had to go to work and get some extra money, and you had to make the team because there was not a lot of money paid out. And as the years progressed, there was a little bit more and more and more money. But today's players, the average salary is like $2 million. And people walking off the street that make the team, they're going to make about $485,000.
Right.
So there's a lot more money due to television contracts and all the other things that the NFL gets to their clubs through marketing. And it's just a lot more money to go around. That's going to be the big thing on this next collective bargaining agreement. Is
right.
What the percentage of the profits is going to be between the players and the owners.
Right. Yeah, and they're Goodell's wanting to hopefully bang that out before the season starts. And every expert I've heard says that he's dreaming. Yeah,
it's not going to happen this year. It's over. It's over after next year's season.
Right.
So it's not going to happen during the season. I would be incredibly surprised if it did, because people want to focus on what they want on their team and on what they're doing. You don't want to be attending meetings concerning collective bargaining agreements and get their focus away from the performance on the field. So I would be very surprised if anything is hammered out during this season. Next off season will be the key, because if it doesn't get done, there could be some work stoppage or something.
Right. So back then, when you're in the off season and you have to get a job in the off season to make ends meet and such, how did that affect how you prepared for the season? Because now even a 7th round pick makes about $300,000 or $400,000 a year, if not more. He can afford to be a full-time football player. What was it like for guys back then when you had to not be a football player for 6 months?
Well, that was just the norm. And, you know, it was just the norm. Everybody was kind of expecting you had to do something, because if you didn't make a certain level, like I said, you were out of money by the time 6 months later you reported to camp, because you haven't made any money at all. You still have the bills you've had all year. So, you know, I worked tutoring migrant workers upstate New York. You know, I worked with NBC and CBS in the off season, doing some reporting and stuff, and it was just a different type of environment. And then we came together in like one mini camp for 3 days, and then the whole philosophy then was you're going to work your way into shape at training camp, because you had 8 weeks.
Right.
But today the training camp is so short, and they have all these other OTAs and mini camps and everything. They get a lot of work in before they get to training camp, so they don't report out of shape anymore. Plus, it's too much money.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're making that kind of money, you don't want to come out of shape to training camp and have somebody really in good shape come in and take your job. So to be competitive, you got to be in great shape when you get to training camp.
Did you know any teammates or anything like that gave up football because they were making more money doing something else as opposed to putting their body through the rigors of the game?
Well, not then, because back then it was more of a love for the game than a love for the money.
Sure.
And everybody just loved to play the game. It was not the kind of money they had today. So, you know, today you can play that first contract and you can give it up. There's been some guys that just played the rookie contract and have quit because it's that much money. Then they get on with their life's work, and that was the whole philosophy back then. This is just a part of your life at the beginning, and then you have to get on with your life's work. And there were people that went on to be dentists and doctors and all kinds of other professions, because they were, you know, that was the way we were taught, was that, you know, this is not something that you're going to live the rest of your life off the earnings you have. And very few people had opportunity to do that. I mean, if you're in the Hall of Fame, yeah, you can go out and you know, demand $20,000 for a personal appearance, and you know, if you guys that even bigger in their life, like the Ditkas and those, you know, people, you can go even higher. And today, like I've heard last week, that Khalil Mack is getting like $200,000 to go out.
Wow.
So it's all different today than it was back then, and people don't have to do a thing to survive today except for keep the money, and
right.
That's a big problem for some people. But other people are entrepreneurs. They open up their own businesses. They have their own foundations where they give back. So it's a lot different when you have a lot of money, what you can do in your off season, what you can do past your NFL career, as opposed to the way it was 30 years ago.
Right, and with the way the training camp was, you mentioned that you could work your way into shape, so it wasn't harped on as much to be in shape when you got into camp, or it was not as high as an expectation as it would be today.
No, it's not. It wasn't expected. It was expected that you would be in decent shape. If you were out of shape, they'd somewhat tease you about it.
Sure,
but just over the years, even the 12 years that I played, I could see the difference from the first year to the 12th year, what was expected of you when you got to training camp.
Sure.
And how much good of a shape you were supposed to be on. Now, the team of the Giants, we weren't very good. Maybe that's why we weren't very good, because we weren't in shape when we got to training camp, and people thought we could get in shape in training camp. Well,
right.
Ditka was fairly expecting you to be in shape, because from day one, we're going to be hitting. And there's no easing into the whole process like it was when I was with the Giants. So I think the expectations were different. And now, I mean, I go up to minicamp and OTAs, and those guys are moving around pretty good, even though they don't have full pads on. They're pretty physical up there, and they get their work in early. So, and the way they have I don't even think they have 2 of these, like so many days during training camp. So, it's a lot more studying, a lot more focus on technique, and a lot more focus on doing the right things and preparing mentally so you don't make mistakes. And then you get out there in the preseason and you see what you have. And with the rules today, as we talked before, Larry, it's very hard to see what you have until you get the real game,
right?
The first game of the year, and people actually have to tackle somebody, for real. So it's always interesting to see how it starts out, because there's always a lot of injuries from the first couple games because of the physicality of the game, and there is no physicality in training camp. So it's always interesting to see who can stay healthy. And that's the key to winning the Super Bowl, is staying healthy.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's what has some Bear fans nervous, even though it was a formula that worked for the Bears a year ago. Coach Nagy and company are more about preserving everyone for the regular season, which means that even though they were learning a new offensive system and everything last year, we barely saw the starters play in the preseason. Like the big dress rehearsal game where they're supposed to play deep into the second half, the starters didn't even dress for that game last year. And like I said, it ended up working out, but the physicality and the lack of training versus what you went through as a player kind of makes people concerned. Like, are they just going to start falling to pieces when they start having to play for real?
Yeah, and that happens every year to certain teams. And health is the most important thing you can have entering at the end of the season. Is you want to have your best 22 players on the field, and if you got 18 out of 22. That's going to be a different team than what you expected coming out of training camp.
Right. And speaking of camp, what was that experience over? I mean, you've already talked about how it's about 2 or 3 times longer than it is now, but like just as far as the practices and stuff, obviously that's much different than now. But the thing that's still the same is or at least for the Bears, some teams do work in their home facilities and whatnot now, but being cut off from society, going away, like you went to Platteville. Those were your years when they were still going back to Platteville and stuff. So you're not even in the same state. You're away from home. You're shacked up in the dorms with the players. What was that experience like?
Well, that for me was kind of a good experience because you get to get away and really focus on your game without the distractions of paying bills and taking kids here, doing this and that. It's like a time where you can really get away and focus on getting better on your game. And then you have the camaraderie of your team in the same situation, and everybody gets to know everybody on a personal level. And the best part, your meetings in the evening were over about 9:30 at night. They started at 7, you're over about 9:30, and you had like an hour and a half, and everybody would run down to the bars in Platteville for an hour and a half and then run back. But then you had a lot of fun with your teammates, just a lot of stories. And in the morning, everybody's having was talking about what happened last night and da-da-da-da-da. And then you're out there, with the same guys you were with the night before. You're out there working hard, trying to block them, trying to make everybody better. So it was a great time for camaraderie, and I think there's got to be some similarities for that, given the amount of free time and the amount of just one-on-one and time with other people on your team. That's what helps build the closeness of the team is the training camp.
Yeah,
that's why it's so important.
Yeah,
and Coach Ditka took us out because before we were in Lake Forest College.
Okay.
And we would practice there, and the wives would come up with, after practice with coolers full of beer and everything. And Ditka was like, after 1 year, he's like, this got changed. And that's when he took us up to Platteville. And, there was no, evening trips home and all that kind of stuff. Now, Bourbonnais is just about far enough, considering that most of the people live up north.
Right.
That they can't make those same kind of trips like we did early on in the Bears. They had to wait for the weekends after scrimmages and preseason games to see their family, unless the family comes down during the day to the practices.
Did it wear on the players or on you for how long it was? You said training camp used to be about 8 weeks long or so.
Yeah, it did, but that was the whole thing, is that you had to make it through training camp.
Right.
A lot of people would get hurt and miss a couple of days, miss a week, miss 2 weeks. But the whole thing was trying to get to the training camp and the physicality of it all. And, day after day after day. Now, this is going to be much better for the players physically because they're not pounding each other. But again, is it better for the game? Are they better tacklers today? I don't think so.
God, no. Yeah.
You know, and this is why all these receivers are running around loose. Plus, nobody can touch the receivers once they're outstretched for a ball, and the game has changed. You know, a lot of people don't like it, but it's probably changed for the better for the health of the players.
Sure.
They don't have to go through all these physical things anymore. And it's a change, and the records are going to be, you know, unbelievable because, you know, as I said, nobody can touch a receiver downfield. Nobody can touch him when he's stretched out. And same thing with the quarterback. Nobody can touch the quarterback. Well, you know, if you don't touch the receiver or the quarterback, it can be pretty easy to get open downfield.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, wow, you mentioned this is 8 weeks long. I mean, by the time, and with all that hitting, and that really speaks to a lot to about the difference between the game then and the game now. And when we talked about it when you were here last time about how, you know, the sudden spike in injuries having to coincide with the CBA cutting down all of the contact in practice, and how many, you know, like 2 months of 2-a-day practices. Your body was pretty much in mid-season form by the time you got to week 1.
Well, I think that you have to get your body to build up like some toughness and some armor and some hardness,
right,
through the contact. And I think that's what's missing. I think a lot, and when people get injured, is that all of a sudden that first game, everything is 100%. Because the preseason, they're not going to be going 100%. Maybe the young guys trying to make the team are. But a veteran is just going to try to make it through the preseason so he doesn't get hurt before the season starts.
Right.
And so for us, the hardest parts were the practices.
Mm-hmm.
The games, even during the season, were not as hard as the practices we went through. So it's different today in that, you know, they go out there that first, because I don't think they do any tackling at all during training camp. So that first preseason game, you got to make a tackle, and you know, there's going to be a lot of missed tackles, and I think you see it a lot throughout the year because they only have like 15 full pad practices during 18 weeks of regular season. So
yeah,
it's pretty much that you're just going to, you know, try to position and, you know, two-hand touch kind of thing, and then during the game you got to come out and be as physical as you can within the rules. And it's tough, and people are adjusting. And they're teaching it at a younger level to do the right way to tackle. Right. And so in a couple of years, I think everybody will be used to this, and it's going to be it's going to be the norm.
Yeah, and I just remember, like, even during my playing days in the mid-'90s in high school, and the 1 year that I played in college, was those first couple of weeks before the season actually started were paramount in getting your body ready for the game. Because I remember, like, I always dreaded the first week or so of practices because my arms would be covered in bruises from all the hitting that we were doing, you know. But by the time we had mid-season, we're still hitting just as much as we were in the preseason, but I'm not getting bruised up like I was before, unless maybe I caught a face mask in the forearm or something like that. Like, my body was more well-tuned for the rigors of the game as opposed to when it was when we first started putting on pads.
Well said. That's well said. That's exactly right.
Yeah, so it was not a lot of. I used to freak out my mom and my girlfriend walking around. I'm purple from the tips of my fingers up to my shoulders and everything. I'm all banged. Like, what are they doing to you when you're out there? It's ridiculous.
That's a football player there, man. That's
right.
Football player.
Yeah.
But usually those first 3 days, those are the worst. I mean, that's when your body's getting used to the hitting. The first 3 days, and then after that, you kind of reach a peak where your body's kind of used to it. And then you go on from there. But those first 3 days are always the toughest because you haven't done anything. You haven't done that kind of physical contact, and all of a sudden you're doing it twice a day. And then once you get past those 3 days, 3 days or 4 days for some, you're just in a groove of what you got to do each and every day. And those days off become more and more important, and you're more grateful for those when they happen. And even like an evening off is a big thing in the middle of training camp when you don't have meetings. That would be a good thing. And today it's just you know, you're not as physical in training camp. So, and like I said before, you do all the work before you get there mainly.
Right.
And I think they have a pretty good idea of who their players are. And, you know, they have a few spots that people are still working on and seeing what they can do, if they might be able to make the team. And it's just, you know, but like I said, when I played, the injury rate was so different that gave people opportunities to make the team.
Sure.
And today there's taxi squads or you know, they can hold people back and put them on the practice squad, about 10, 12 of those guys. So they get to look at guys a little bit longer throughout the year, and it's just a little bit more opportunity. And it's better for the players that they're not being injured as often by their own teammates.
Right.
You know, which would happen every year. So William the Parody would fall on somebody and break an ankle or something.
So, speaking of which, you know, that the 84, this is going to be a big year for the Bears either way. It's the 100-year anniversary of the first season, or the 100th season, I should say, not the anniversary just yet, but the 100th season. And it's because of everything that took place in 2018, big things are expected in 2019. And I feel like the 2018 team and the 2019 team very much mirror the teams that you were on in 84 and 85. In 84, you were coming off maybe with like a 500 season, I think. It was Ditka's first full season as head coach because his first year was the strike-shortened year in 82. And you come in 84, you have this good football team, you have a lot of talent, there are high hopes. You guys win the division, you go to the NFC Championship game, you fall just short against the 49ers. You come in 85, and because you've won the division, because you've been to the playoffs, now things are expected of this team. And I feel like this team in 2019 is very much facing the same thing. In 2018, we got all these new guys coming in. We got this exciting new coach, a new offense. You know, let's keep our fingers crossed and hope it goes well. It goes great. We fall short in the playoffs. Now we are coming into 2019. We have all this team that's together again. You know, everybody's in year 2. We have all this talent. Now things are expected of this team to happen. Can you talk about the difference going into training camp, the vibe with the team itself in 84 versus what it was in 85?
Well, in 85, we knew we were a team to be reckoned with.
Right.
I mean, we just knew it during the off season. That left a bitter taste in our mouth when we went to the 49ers in the playoffs. Now, the difference between this team and our team was that they had a big change. And Fangio has left to be a head coach.
Right.
And, you know, Chuck Pagano's a good defensive coordinator. He's going to play the same 4-3 defense. And, you know, it should be similar, but in any season, Larry, you have to start with the first game. You can't start talking play. Let the fans talk all they want about going to the playoffs, but the Bears got to beat Green Bay in the first game.
Right.
I mean, that's just, if they want the season to go the way they want it to go, you have to control your division. And the big dogs in the division is Green Bay. And so you got to beat them the first game. That's just like a must game already. You know, you can win all 6 of your division games. You're going to be in a position to go to the playoffs, and then from there anything can happen. But it starts with the first games, and the Bears actually open up the NFL on Thursday night. So,
right.
It's going to be a huge game, and the Packers, you know, the Bears had the Packers whipped in the last year opener, and Aaron Rodgers, you know, made a miracle second half, and they beat the Bears. So there should be some bad taste in everybody's mouth, not just from the last game of the year that they lost to Philadelphia, but for this first game last year that they lost in the way that they lost it. So I expect a great performance. I expect them to be ready to play for that first game, and that's going to set the tone because Green Bay Packers are a team you have to beat in our division. And so it's going to be very interesting. It's going to start off right from the top. So I look forward to seeing if they can do that. Then we know there's going to be progress this year.
That was a different thing for you when you were playing, because you played, it was the NFC Central, and there were 5 teams in the division, instead of 4, because Tampa Bay was in the division as well. So half your schedule was dedicated to your division. I mean, that's that's a huge chunk, obviously.
Yeah, I liked it that way. I thought that was better because those games are, they're a lot more important than playing, the AFC West or something.
Right.
And so playing those division games twice a year, you're going against the same guys twice a year. And every now and then they throw the Packers in the preseason for us. So,
really?
You play those guys.
Wow.
They play the preseason game in Milwaukee. That's what they would do. And in Milwaukee, both teams were on the same sideline.
Yeah.
In Milwaukee.
At Old Fulton County Stadium.
Line. Yeah, that was, with Ditka and Forrest Gregg hating each other, and they're sitting there right next to each other. That was crazy. But when you play division games often, again, playing the same people all the time. I'm blocking Chris Doman every play. Joey Browner, a tough safety that I had to go against twice a year, every year.
Yeah.
And you get to know it. You get to know these players and their habits and how good they are. And they were tough games. Even Tampa Bay, they never were a division winner when I played there, but they were always loaded with number one players on defense.
Right.
That they drafted over the years.
Yeah.
And, the Selmans, and there were just so many good players. And you had to be ready to win those games if you wanted to win the division. And we put a lot of emphasis on it, and I think it still holds true today. You got to control your division.
I think the only time I remember – go ahead.
Yeah, and because it's only 4 teams and you're only playing 3, is that much more important.
Right. I think the only time I remember the Bears playing a division opponent in the preseason, I think they played the Vikings overseas or something in the 80s. Did you do that?
We went over to Sweden.
Wow.
Played the
Okay.
Vikings. Yeah. So, all the Norwegians, and they were all excited the Vikings were coming over. And we went to Gothenburg, Sweden. Yeah.
Wow.
We went to Gothenburg and played over there. And, those are great trips for your family to go over and see another part, but it's kind of an extra preseason game for us.
Right.
And that just means you're reporting early to training camp, and you're going to get 9 weeks in again instead of 8. So same thing with the Hall of Fame game. You just get an extra week. The coaches like it because an extra week of practice, but for everybody else, it's another week away from your family.
Yeah. Speaking of the preseason, one of the games that I remember vividly as a kid in the preseason was a game, I believe it was at home in Chicago at Soldier Field against the St. Louis at the time Cardinals.
I knew you was going to say that.
And it was basically a fight where a football game broke out kind of thing, because there were punches and benches being cleared every time and everything. I just remember watching that game, and it's like, this is crazy. Like after every play, there was some kind of brawl or shoving match or something like that going on.
Well, there was the big brawl on the Cardinals sidelines. Pat Dunsmore caught a pass, and I think there was some extra punches thrown over there while he was on the ground over on their sideline. And then Van Horn got in there and started fighting, and then all of a sudden, if you stepped on the field, I was on the sideline. You stepped on the field, the cameras have you on the field. That was like $500 fine back then. And then Horn and Dunsmore, and I think another player, they got pretty good fines. O.J. Anderson, who was on the Cardinals at the time, he actually kicking somebody in the pile, and he got a huge fine. Every time I see him, I remind him of that. And it was a big game. It was an annual game. We played every year. The last game would be the Cardinals. It was the annual Armed Forces game.
Okay.
And it went back a long way. And then they stopped doing it for some reason. I don't know when, but it was the Armed Forces game that was played every year. It was against the Cardinals.
And that was, and just talking about that, I just remember that the preseason was a lot more competitive, and it seemed, at least amongst the players, that you guys cared whether you won or lost preseason games, which is totally not how it's done now.
Well, the preseason is the preseason. You don't care whether you win or lose. You like to win them all, but they don't count. And most of the time, like in the beginning of the preseason, you play a quarter. And then by the 4th preseason game, you would play a half, and the first half. So it's basically up to the the people trying to make the team to finish the game for you.
Right.
And in fact, I think the year we were won the Super Bowl, we were 1-3 in the preseason.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of emphasis on. I mean, the coaches want to win, because winning breeds winning.
Sure.
But you're finishing games with people that are not going to be on the team, mostly the second half. And then sometimes Ditka would like the offensive line to go for like 3 quarters because they always claimed they weren't in good enough shape. And so they'd have to go 3 quarters instead of 2 quarters. And then people like Walter Playton, as soon as he make his first big run, that was it. You're out, Walter.
Right.
Get you hurt, so you're done. We know you got it.
Did you get lumped in with the offensive lineman on that, or were you exempt?
No, they let me out. They knew I was fragile.
Fragile.
Don't get Emery hurt. He's not that big, and we always had a lot of tight ends that needed to play too.
So one of the ugly parts about training camp is cut day, and in the NFL recently they've cut it down to just one big day for cuts, as opposed to when they used to do first cuts, second cuts, and then the final cuts kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think you were never under any pressure with that. So, but what was it like being around guys who were literally playing for their lives?
Well, I got cut a couple times, so I know what it's like to be.
Okay.
I got cut by the Bears my first year here and missed 7 games, and then they brought me
That's
back
right. Yeah, we
injury,
talked about that.
and I got to play for the last 9. And then I got cut that same year by the Denver Broncos in training camp. And after that happened, I was always ready. I was always in shape and always ready to compete because I knew what it was like to be out on the street looking for a job. And for the young guys coming in, it's something they've been dreaming about their whole life. It's making the NFL roster. And it's pretty intense because they want to make that team. Now, today they have the practice squad, which helps a lot of young guys stick around and develop their skills, and hopefully they might get another chance during the year or maybe the next year. And there's been some players that have come off practice squads that have had great careers. So you just never know how these guys. I mean, the Bears had the receiver from the Carolina Panthers, McCardle.
Mm-hmm.
They had that guy on practice squads for 2 or 3 years, and then when they finally release him, he goes to
Jacksonville,
the Carolina Panthers, and he becomes an all-pro receiver.
Yeah.
So you just never know. People need to be in the right situation and the right offense and the right defense for them to really flourish. And so you just never know. Sometimes there's talent there, but they don't know what to do with it, where to put it. And it could be a case made for me because I played wide receiver for 3 years. I played fullback for a year. And then Ditka and I talked, and it made me a tight end.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you just have to be in the right office suited for your talents and in the right position to play.
It's funny how sometimes the difference between being an also-ran and having an NFL career is the intangibles. It's not that you're not talented enough or that you don't know how to play or you can't make the plays. It's little things like, maybe this guy thrives because he's closer to his family, or, he is in a system that works better for him than the one that he was drafted into, or maybe he doesn't vibe with his coach, or, something crazy like that. It really just comes down to the intangibles, or it can for a lot of guys.
Yeah. Well, my son played 5 years with the Indianapolis coach.
Right.
And I told him when he left, I said, look, it's not always about the talent. It's how you get along with your teammates and your coaches and how you fit in. And that plays an important part for young guys coming in. It's being able to fit in with the veterans that are there, being coachable, coaches seeing that you are smart. You might not have the physical talent as the next guy, but this guy's not going to make the same mistake over again, even though he's gifted. So there's a lot that goes into deciding how you make your team, and getting along with people, being smart, not making mistakes, and then, of course, playing special teams. Some guys can't play special teams.
Right.
They haven't made a tackle in their whole life, and you ask them to go down there and make a tackle, and they don't have the toughness to do it. And so all those things are things that coaches look at, is how many things can they do to help the team, how versatile they are, because everybody's not a starter. If you're not a starter, you got to play on special teams.
Right.
And, can he play on all the special teams? Can he run back some kicks? Can he be a backup fullback and a tight end? Can he play more than one position at wide receiver? Or lineman can play guard, center, and tackle. All those things you have to look at and decide when you're making a roster. And so other than just playing one position and being good at that, there's a lot of versatility that's involved.
Right. As John Fox famously said once, the best kind of ability in the NFL is availability.
Yeah, you got to be, being available and not being hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. John Rawson used to say, I know you got ability and I know you have whatever, but he said durability is the one that I need that. Not just ability and all this other stuff. He said, I need the durability because I need a guy I can count on Sunday.
Yeah.
And today that's different. It's totally different because these guys are making so much money. They don't care about Sunday. If I'm not 100%, or 90%, I'll wait another week because I'm going to get paid. My contract's already guaranteed. I already got that money. There's no use in me going out there and not giving it, I'm not 100%. So it's totally different. Whereas when I was playing, you didn't get out there, you might be making, $200,000. Then all of a sudden the rookie's making $40,000 and he starts to play. Well, I see a difference in salaries they can keep and save. And all of a sudden that guy's going to get a better shot than you. So it's different in that the money plays such an important part of the whole realm of NFL football today. And it counts in who they're going to keep in training camp because they have to fit it in on their budget. And It's a lot of, in today's NFL, you have to pay about probably 10 to 12 to 15 players at the most, and then everybody else has got to fit in under a budget.
Right.
It starts with them quarterbacks making, 20% of your whole payroll.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they're lucky to get what they're getting out of their quarterback today,
mm-hmm.
because he's such a young kid and he's working on his first contract still. He hasn't got the big bucks yet.
Right.
That's why they're able to sign Khalil Mack, because
right.
the money's going to him instead of the quarterback.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, the problem that the Bears have with all the young guys that are finishing up their rookie deals, like Tariq Cohen and Eddie Jackson and things like that. These are guys that are going to demand
Trubisky.
Obviously Trubisky, but trying to fit all of that along with the monster contract that Khalil Mack got. It's a nice problem to have, but a problem nonetheless.
Yeah, it's a nice problem unless you're the general manager.
Right.
Trying to figure this stuff out, But
or
last year with Khalil Mack. So it's like this year's got to be the year. They're going all in. It's got to be the year because Trubisky's going to be coming up in a year or two, I think. So they've got to win it now.
Yeah, they got 2 more years because this is year 3. Yeah. They got next year and his 5th-year option the year after. So before they have to tack on, before they're obligated to do something. So they still have some time to make a decision, but that's going to be here before you know it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's a decision.
And the salary cap goes up every year too.
True.
That helps too.
Yeah,
it goes up every year. So by the time Trubisky comes, maybe, and then there'll be a new collective bargaining agreement. So there's a lot on the line here.
Yeah. Well, Emery, I know you got a tea time that you got to get to, so I'm going to wrap this up for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, with real quick with the 100-year celebration thing, they announced the list of the top 100 players in Bear history, and I wasn't a big fan of the list, to be honest with you. Well, number one, you didn't make the cut somehow. I don't understand how that happened, but
that was 101. I tell everybody.
101, okay. 101. But I mean, unfortunately, that happened to a few notable Bears. A guy like Thomas Jones didn't make the cut, and there were several others that weren't on the list. And the biggest problem I had with the list was the comparison of apples to oranges amongst the teams or the players and the different eras and things like that. And I thought that maybe what would have been a better idea, especially for the Bears, because they're a team that's been here literally as long as the NFL has, was something that they did in the 75 years book that they released during the 75th anniversary. And what they did in that book was they had all decade teams. They had a 20s team, a 30s team, a 40 team, and things like that. And, for there to be an 80s team that probably would have been a majority of 1985 guys, but still an 80s team would have opened up the gates. Number one, it eliminates the whole rankings, and then there's no argument about whether Gale Sayers is better than Red Grange or anything like that, and because it keeps everyone within their own era and against the guys that they actually played with and against, as opposed to trying to say that Bill George was a better middle linebacker than Brian Urlacher. It's a bananas conversation to try to have.
Yeah, you can't do it. But the thing about this, you have to remember the Bears have more Hall of Famers.
Yes.
Than any other team in the league. I think they have 27.
Yeah,
so
27, 28.
You include every one of those guys in your top 100, even though you probably don't know most of them.
Right.
Because they were in the original beginning of the leagues, and they played in the 30s and the 40s and the 20s, but great players in their own right. And
absolutely,
so you're really talking about top 73 players because the Hall of Famers are automatically going to be in. So, and when you're talking about 100 years, I mean, that's a hell of a lot of football.
Right.
And it's a great honor for those guys to make it because, like I said, 100 years of Chicago Bears football. This is not the Jacksonville Jaguars all-time team. This is pretty much the oldest team in the NFL's all-time 100 team. So much respect to all those guys. There were a couple surprises. I just heard that Khalil Mack made it. I was very surprised that he made it after 1 year. Even though he had a great year, I thought that was like, well, what happens if he never plays another down for the Bears? All-time 100 player. So, but a lot of guys and a lot of my teammates made it.
Yes.
So I'm sure they're all very happy, and maybe if they had an incentive bonus in their contract when they were playing, if they could get another 100,000 or another million for making the all-time team, they'd be very happy. Otherwise, it's just a few people's opinion and good guys. I mean, Don Pearson and Don Pape. They've been around the Bears a long time. So
Hall of Famers in their own right.
Yeah, and Don Pearson, I believe, is a Hall of Fame writer, and Pompey is on the Hall of Fame committee. So they know what good football players look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really, for me, it wasn't so much that, like, what are these guys thinking or anything like that. It just, to me, I think it served the purpose that it served, like, right now as a conversation piece, more so saying than it's etched in stone that these are the 100 best players, because the argument immediately begins when you start to think about who's not on the list and things like that. And as you mentioned, 27, 28 Hall of Famers on the team. I think in the top 20 there were only two guys that weren't in the Hall of Fame in the top 20 or something like that. I think it was like Devin Hester and somebody else that was in the top 20 that weren't Hall of Famers, or hopefully in Hester's case yet in the Hall of Fame.
He'll be in there, man. He was a ball player.
He was, absolutely. So, but I thought it was more of a conversation piece, and then I thought of the all decades thing, it definitely would have opened things up. To even players in the 90s and the 2000s and such like that more people get to be on that list, and maybe you see an Adewale Ogunleye on that list, and things like that. Or obviously you would have made the 80s team. Of course, you were tight end for pretty much the entire 1980s as well, and opens it up to other fun conversations, like, is Walter Payton in the 70s team or the 80s team, or is he in both?
He would have made both. He would have made both. Are you kidding? Yeah. He would have made both. But still, like you said, there's still going to be some people that will be disappointed that some players didn't make it, either it was the 80s, 90s, or whatever, or the all-time 100. There's still going to be a conversation about, well, this guy was my favorite player and he should have been on there.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be that conversation, and that's what's great about the book, I think, itself, is that it does open up the conversation, like you said.
Right. And then you mentioned Khalil Mack. When I saw that, it first, that was actually the one that kind of like, well, this is more of a conversation piece than an actual, ranking of the players kind of thing, because they put him in at 60, and
Wow.
so he's ranked 40 ahead of 40 players all time on the list after only one season in the uniform. And he did have an amazing year, and I think overall he will be a player that belongs on that list. But after one season, A, does he belong on the list, and B, where? And that conversation gets to be had. But I was surprised that he did make the list, and then not surprised at the same time, because I think he had more of a recency bias than anything else to be on that list. So but it was interesting looking at the list and then going down it. Even somebody like me, the amateur historian and lifelong Bear fan, how many people on that list whose names I didn't know, but it's ranked ahead of guys that I did or know, and things like that. So it was an interesting time when that came out. And I love the all decades team idea, 'cause like I said, it eliminates the rankings, so you're not trying to compare apples to oranges. It opens it up to a lot more players being included as well.
Yeah, and the Hall of Fame is trying to right some wrongs too. Next year's Hall of Fame class is going to be, they're saying it could be up to 17 people.
Whoa,
to try to get some of these older players that have missed the Hall of Fame, and people don't know, but there's a lot of great players. But because of just the Hall of Stats now, with all these recent, statistical things that people are putting up, and it's all the new players that are getting in, and you're leaving a lot of great players like Jim Coverts and Jay Hilgenbergs and Bears, and just a ton of players. Lamar Parrish and Kenny Riley, a couple cornerbacks from the Cincinnati Bengals that don't get a snap. And Ken Riley's like 65 interceptions, fifth all time to this day in a league that didn't pass a lot back then.
Right. Yeah.
And how did these guys not get in the Hall of Fame? And then there's people from the 40s and the 50s. There's just a lot of people that got overlooked, and they're trying to make that right next year. Also, because of the 100-year anniversary, they're trying to do that to get the classes, some of these people that should be in. So it's going to be an interesting year this year.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned, Hall of Fame travesties, the fact that Jerry Kramer had to wait until last year to get in. I mean, God bless him. He was almost 50 years outside of his career before he finally got inducted into the Hall of Fame. That should have happened a very long time ago.
And so you can't just bring two old-timers in.
Yeah.
That's just, you're never going to get it done. You're never going to get it done. And so next year they're going to have a pretty big class, and there's going to be a lot of people that, are deserving, that just haven't had the opportunity to be recognized. So I'm looking forward to that too next year after the Super Bowl to announce that class.
Yeah, that sounds pretty great to get some of those guys in and take them off that the best not in the Hall of Fame list, to get them off that list and get them in the Hall of Fame.
I wish they would do it for like 2 years in a row, really, to catch everything up. That would be nice. But I don't want them to go in with asterisk either, though.
Right. Yeah. Well, I have one last thing and it's not really a question, it's just something that I wanted to clear up with you before I let you go. When I was listening back to our first conversation, we mentioned President Obama, and I made a comment to where something about him being a Cubs fan or something like that. Basically, what I said amounted to me not being a Cubs fan, and that is not true. That is not true. I was like, whoa, wait a minute, no, because I remember listening to your response, and you were defending the Cubs. Like, no, I'm a North Sider. We got to go Cubs. And I was like, wait a minute. Did he think I'm not a Cubs fan? Like, no, I am a Cubs fan. I literally grew up down the street on I could literally walk to Wrigley Field from where I was born. So it's like, I am a North Sider, true and true. I just wanted to clear that up. I am not a stinking White Sox fan, and that was the one thing I didn't like about President Obama, was that he was a South Sider and he was a Sox fan. And we're Cubs fans. You and we are Cubs fans. So, yes, I wanted to clear that up and let you know that I sport the blue and red, not the black and white. So,
all right. I appreciate that clarity. I'm a Cubs fan all the way.
There you go.
To the grave.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So, Emery, thanks so much again for your time, and look forward to having you back on real soon.
Okay. You have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Remember, guys, ACAA is the promo code for $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek, and Bears100 is the promo code for 50% deposit bonus at MyBookie. Want to thank Emery Moorehead for coming back on the show. A lot of really great insight on the training camp experience, what it was like for him then, what training camp is like nowadays, and the purpose of training camp. I was very surprised to hear him say that, they weren't expecting you to be 100% in shape when you got to training camp. That's what training camp was for, to fine-tune your body and get you ready for the season. Nowadays, especially with the lack of hitting because of the CBA and everything, it's much more important that you come to camp in shape, ready to go, because you're not going to be doing as much hitting and tackling and everything as Emery and his people in his era did back then. It was remember when I made the remark to Emery about how even in my playing days in high school and then 1 year that I played in college, the first week of practice was always the toughest one because your arms would be covered in bruises. You'd be so tender because you're banging into stuff and catching face masks and hitting shoulder pads and everything in between. But it's like throughout the season, those bruises, they go away because your body is used to the punishment. And a lot of the players today don't really do that as much. They're going to hit for the first time on Sunday. It might be the only time next week that they use pads and hit in practice and things like that. It's a much different experience for players now than it was back in Emery's day. And like I mentioned at the top of the show, money has a lot to do with it. Even guys that are drafted in the later rounds and things like that don't necessarily have to go out and find off-season jobs to be able to make ends meet. They are able to train 24/7 or train throughout the year to get ready for the season, as opposed to Emery Moorehead. Even he had jobs in the off-season. You heard he was doing TV and radio work and things like that. Other guys was going off selling insurance and things like that, going back to school to prepare themselves to have a career where they could make a regular living and things like that. So like I said, a much different time, money a much bigger factor now than it was then, or the factor in the difference between the two. The preseason is shorter, the season is longer because that's more money for the league. The players make more money. The sport has grown exponentially since Emery's day and everything. The billion-dollar TV deals and things like that. The NFL probably makes more in a week now than their entire TV package was worth during Emery Moorehead's day back in the 80s. I remember watching, I think it was TNT did their own original movie about Monday Night Football in the first year of Monday Night Football, and I remember Pete Rozelle sitting down with one of the producers or something like that, and Pete Rozelle told the producer that they wanted $30 million for the season of Monday Night Football, and the guy almost fell out of his chair. $30 million. If Roger Goodell sat down with a TV executive right now and told him it would cost him $30 million for Monday Night Football to remain on ESPN, he would probably try to write the check with his own personal account. That's how quickly he would take advantage of that situation. It's billions of dollars for Monday Night Football to be on ESPN, and just for Monday Night Football to be on ESPN, it's an enormous amount of money that the NFL is making now with their TV rights and things like that. And it affects absolutely everything, including how teams get prepared for the season with 8 weeks for training camp. That is crazy. Can you imagine 8 weeks for training camp, what that was like? I mean, that's 2 months. 2 months. Like right now, the way that they've handled it for the last several years, they're only going to be at Bourbonnais for 2 weeks. And then they go back and they're practicing in Lake Forest, getting ready for the last 2 weeks of the preseason. So it's not even a full month away from their wives and their kids and their families and cut off from society and everything. It's 2 weeks. It's a vacation, a working vacation, but a vacation nonetheless. Back then with Emery and even if it was like that, you're still talking 6 weeks away from the family before you're sleeping in your own bed again and everything. It's a vastly different experience than what it is now. And it was really interesting to talk to Emery and hear all of that from him. So I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. And I hope you guys enjoy the next one. Carolina Teague from, I talked to her today, actually. I've already recorded her interview. It'll come out next week. And formerly of ESPN in San Antonio, she's with, what is it called? She's going to kill me. It's 7:60 a.m. in San Antonio. I forget. I think the Ticket or something like that. Caroline, if you're hearing this, sweetheart, I'm sorry. But sports as told by a girl.com is the website that she writes for, and everything else. I had a really great conversation with her. I really enjoyed the talk a lot, and I hope you will as well. And then the week after that, the fifth and final interview, Brett Coleman will be coming back on to the show, and this time he'll be talking to us about the videos that he's been releasing on YouTube. Guy's got like 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. He did a video last year about Eddie Jackson, making a case for him to be the defensive MVP of the year last year. He just most recently released that video on Mitch Trubisky. I mean, you even heard Adam Rank talk about it. I mean, that's the reach that these videos had. Adam Rank has seen it and everything. He also did a really cool one where he broke down how it was the Bears shut down the Rams last year. And he also profiled a pre-draft Roquan Smith, saying why it was he might suffer and fall in the draft because of all the quarterbacks, and he'll be drafted lower than he probably would have in a regular draft when there weren't 6 quarterbacks going in the first round or anything like that, and he should be drafted much higher. I wonder if 8 was high enough. We'll ask him when we talk about those videos. But we're breaking all of those down, what the process is and everything like that, and get some further analysis on Trubisky and what he thinks about him. But that's your homework assignment for that episode. Brett Coleman will be the week that we play the Panthers. I'll release it on Tuesday the 6th. That's when that episode will come out. We play the Panthers on Thursday the 8th. So you have a homework assignment between now and August the 6th when the episode drops. Watch those videos. Just search Brett Coleman or The Film Room on YouTube, and you'll be able to find those videos and check those out. So that's your homework assignment, so you'll be able to follow what we're talking about during the show when we have Brett back on. So come back on Tuesday of next week for Carolina Teague and our conversation, and the following Tuesday after that on August the 6th, Brett Coleman will be breaking down film with Brett, and then from there, Bears Panthers in the preseason. We start getting the ball rolling with the preseason shows, and before you know it, we'll have Evan Western back to preview week 1 and how we're going to kick the unholy hell out of Green Bay on Thursday Night Football. So come on back Tuesday for the Carolina Teague Show, and from then on, it's all downhill, guys. We're almost there. The Bears are actually on the field practicing this week. It has already started. The 2019 campaign has begun as the road to Miami is being laid out in front of us. So come back on Tuesday for Carolina Teague. And until then, my name is Larry D, and this has been Bears Talk Underground.